Did you ever hear the tragedy of Supreme Leader Snoke the Peg Warmer? I thought not. It is a story Hasbro would not tell you. He's a customizer's legend. Ironic, he could stand on any shelf as any other character, but never as himself.
Hello my friends and welcome back to Player Display for another very special entry in the Customizer's Journal catalog. So today I have to present to you, I suppose that we can call it the Darth Plagueis the Wise and Young Sheev Palpatine 2-pack. So obviously the main reason why I wanted to make these two is for Plagueis the Wise. He's a custom that I've always wanted to make for years really, but I was still trying to think about how I do it, what would be the right paints, the right base body and all that. And now that I'm in the situation I'm in, I decided to bite the bullet and go for it, and I am stupidly pleased with the results. And also, since I had a whole bunch of fodder in my bin that I had nothing really to do with, I went ahead and I just made a young Palpatine just so we have someone to accompany him. So before we go into these figures, I guess I'll just go ahead and rattle off the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise. We kind of got a Cliff's Notes version of it in Revenge of the Sith from Palpatine, but just for those of you who don't know, and for those of you who do know because of the memes, oh shit. For those of you who already know because of the memes and all the various YouTube videos out there, be patient, this channel's for beginners, okay? So skip past it if you don't like it. But anyways, here we go. So basically, Darth Plagueis the Wise was the original master of Palpatine over here, and he'd raise him to become the total old, ugly piece of shit that we'd see him to be in the first 3 movies. Basically, the deal with Plagueis the Wise is he had a big concern about immortality and meddled with the midichlorians, the special little microorganism force things that George Lucas kind of made up for the prequels. And as a result of that, the Force itself wanted to counter his actions by immaculately creating a new, very Force-sensitive child to defeat the Sith, who went by the name of Anakin. You might have heard of him. When Palpatine also learned about this prophecy being fulfilled, he got his master as drunk as possible and killed him in his sleep. And then he recounted the story of how he killed his own master to Anakin to coerce him into becoming the big old badass we know and love today, being Darth Vader. So effectively, Plagueis is the most important Star Wars character to the Skywalker saga, who we never actually see on screen. He was only ever mentioned in Palpatine's iconic monologue from Revenge of the Sith. He also had an entire Legends novel devoted to him, and that's kind of it. We don't have a whole lot else. Although there was a Star Wars The Black Series 3.75-inch scale figure, which I once had but no longer, that did go ahead and influence this figure that we have off to the side. Anyways, enough jibber-jabber. I think we'll go ahead and start with Plagueis over here, because, I mean, obviously. I guess it is worth mentioning that because this is a much bigger figure, I am using the stand that we actually got from the snow-capped wolf figure that we looked at before, and I said that this would be a nice handy-dandy extra stand for someone else, and because this guy is so gargantuan, I thought he fit the bill just fine. So let's go from head to toe and just talk about what this guy is comprised of so you can make your very own Darth Plagueis. Obviously, you're not going to have all these components, but odds are if you have a fodder bin, you can go in there and just grab some parts to kind of scrap things together. I was kind of making things up as I went. Oops, you could put the saber to the side. Starting off with the base figure, as you could probably suspect, this head sculpt is not from the Black Series. It is a custom 3D printed good. Actually, I think it is injected molded because it had no layers to it whatsoever. So basically, I have 3 custom made parts of this figure, which I got off of eBay, being the head sculpt, the mask, and this lightsaber cane, which I will have links for in the description. They each came from different sellers, but both of them are really good, and I highly encourage going after them if you're looking to make a I was going to say Supreme Leader Snoke, but if you're willing to botch a Supreme Leader Snoke in order to produce a Plagueis of your very own. But anyways, here we are at the head sculpt, and I adore what the sculpt is. And obviously, when you get a custom head sculpt off of eBay, it's just likely going to just be slate gray, which was fortunately just the right color to go with for this guy. So pretty much, I think I started with a really dark gray paint, and then I got in all the crevices, pretty much just drenched it with that dark gray. And then I kind of did a dry brush with a few coats of a lighter gray without going into the crevices, so that way the wrinkles would be a little bit more pronounced. And then after that, I did a little bit of, I thought it was going to be a flat coat, but it wound up being a gloss coat instead. but I kind of like the glossy feel he has to it. It makes him feel a little bit more organic. And then I went ahead in there and I made the eyes a little bit darker, kind of to give him some shading. And I had to hand paint the eyes, which was an absolute bitch to do, but I really love the end result. It's a little lopsided, but then again, he's cheating death. It's okay if he's a little bit off. As for this mask, pretty much I hit it with a flat coat black, and then I also used some acrylics to bring out some of the glossy parts I wanted on the mask itself. And then, as you can see, the straps remained flat coated. And I also did a little bit of a silver dry brush on these tubes and this little microphone looking thing over here, and these little dial shapes that we got at the top. And that goes on his face just with friction and tension alone. Obviously, after I painted the face and gave it the gloss, I made it a little bit tighter, so that just slots right on under the chin, no problem. And when you take it off, of course, you have his exposed face. So I went a little bit darker at the lips. I think I did a little bit of a black wash right in that crevice there. And I kind of let it spread out a little bit, so it's not just, you know, a line. This time it looks like it's a little bit bleeded over. It looks like actual lips that kind of gradually merge into the rest of the skin tone. It came out very naturally. Honestly, this is the best flesh job. That sounds incorrect. This is the best skin tone attempt that I did at a custom figure that I've ever seen, for me, personally. I've never done better than this. This might be the best Star Wars custom that I've ever made. When you get to the neck, you can obviously tell this is a Supreme Leader Snoke base body. And then as for the rest of the parts, I kind of just went with creative license. I mean, all we really know about Plagueis' appearance is that he is the moon alien species, he is tall, and he has this really cool long saber cane, which we will talk about later. As for the rest of the armor and stuff, all the artwork, it varies. Sometimes he has red robes, sometimes he has no armor, sometimes he's fully cloaked. I wanted to do a little bit of everything to kind of get a middle ground. So I kind of actually took Old Republic as inspiration, where basically you got the classic traditional robes, and then you have some armor popping out from the tunics. So pretty much, I believe I got the shoulder pauldrons from the, what was it, the Obsidian Fury Pacific Rim 2 model kit, a movie I still haven't seen for whatever reason, but I built the kit. Then I kind of stripped it for parts years ago, and I still had these shoulder pads just lying around. And actually, all the armor parts here, I secured them with a hot glue gun to sort of add to the shape of what is otherwise a very disheveled and dimorphic Snoke body. I do have an actual unmodified Snoke on hand, so you'll have an idea of what I mean. But basically, one really important thing about the shoulder pauldrons here is to hide the fact that Snoke's shoulders are actually off. Like, I can show you that this shoulder is higher than this one over here, and then when you put these robes on, it kind of hides that. Then it gives him more of that symmetrical feel that a moon would have, and not that mutant clone unexplained thing that Snoke is in the movies. As for the armor we got on the pecs, that actually came from a Gundam model kit. You might recognize that. Of course, whenever you build a model kit, sometimes you're going to get some extra parts. Usually when they produce these kits on the sprues, you have extra little bits, and that's really just because it's a cost-effective thing. So sometimes you'll just have some extra pieces to throw in the fodder bin, and sometimes you'll find a project for them in the next day or years. In this case, I had them for like a year or two maybe, and I pretty much trimmed them up. I think these are from some extra pectoral or shoulder parts. That's right, they were on the shoulders, but I trimmed them off, then angled them so that way they would be on the pecs right here. And they also have some super glue to, again, give them a more symmetrical body shape implied underneath. These are also two Gundam parts over here. I actually have no idea what they're from, but I kind of just trimmed them up to kind of give him an implied ab sort of thing that he's hiding under there. And then also same goes on for the crotch. This crotch bit right over here is also from the Obsidian Fury kit that I took apart from Pacific Rim. That little belt bit up there, which I was considering actually painting in a lighter silver, that is from, I think, a Mandalorian model kit, but it came with some extra parts from Boba Fett, so I trimmed that right off one of the gauntlets. As for these hip portions over here, these are from, I believe, the Shadow Stormtrooper. He had multiple options, but I just needed one, so I decided to keep the others for my fodder bin, and obviously it came together here just fine. On the back, we have a little bit of a leather strap. I mean, it's going to be covered by the tunic pretty much always, so I kind of just fudged that on. That came from a wallet. I painted that over manually with the same silver paint that I did with everything else. Going down to the legs, I didn't go too crazy. I didn't want this guy to be too armored to the teeth. I wanted him to be believably prequel, even though we never saw him, but at the same time a little bit more laid back, not overdone like some of the really, admittedly very awesome designs that we saw in the Old Republic, even though he didn't show up in that era. It's pretty much a Snoke. Everything from here on down is pretty symmetrical down to the joints and the feet. As for the feet, of course, Snoke is known for having slippers, and I tried to workshop that by getting some leather and creating some implied armor, almost like you'd see on a medieval knight. So when you spray paint the shoes, or I think I spray painted the shoes with a primer, and then I hand painted that and the leather with a silver to sort of give him that knight looking shoe boot thing going on. And I really love the results there. Again, simple shapes, but they do kind of bring up the idea that this is kind of, you know, a very traditional, essential Sith for the shelf. I think the last thing that I need to mention concerning the sculpt is I did do a little something with the hands. I painted them the exact same way that I painted up the head and the neck, but I also did a little something over here. Actually, I'll bring in my non-modified Snoke over here, and you can see that this hand is a lot more open, which is good. It's a nice force-wielding hand, I suppose, but it wasn't very good for gripping anything, and for Plagueis over here, who, of course, wields a much longer weapon, I did want him to have another gripping hand. So I actually cut off those two fingers, moved them in a little bit, gave it a little bit of super glue, and then I used some hot glue from the glue gun to fill in the gaps. So now he actually has a suitable gripping hand, and it works as a good-looking force push, force choke, force lift hand, whatever you like. So I'm happy with the options that we have here. Let's go ahead and talk about the paints that I used. This was actually one of my first exploits when it came to paints from Krylon, which I've never used before. Pretty much before this, I was using Tamiya or Testors, which are really tiny cans for about 13 bucks a pop. And honestly, they just were not the most cost-effective thing when it came to doing a whole bunch of customs at once. So I decided to try Krylon, which is pretty much triple the quantity and half the price per can. And it came out great. But pretty much my suggestions for those is, first of all, do it in an outside environment. I kind of did that in my bathroom, and it smelled pretty putrid for a few hours. That might be common knowledge, but I gotta learn too, alright? I'm just a dude behind a camera, okay? Second thing, I think it is worth searching out paints that are specifically paint and primer, which was the black over here. So that way, when I hit the whole figure with black, I pretty much already had the primer already there. So when I went ahead and did the armor, it was already ready to be manually painted with whatever I wanted. As you can see, nothing's getting scratched off or anything. So the acrylics that I used for the dark silver just laid right on, and I was actually very pleased with how well it went on there. I didn't do any weathering. For me, this feels like the type of Sith who is kind of the scientist in the back labs. He's not running around killing a whole bunch of dudes. He's very quiet and secluded. And the last component that we have here are these really beautifully done robes. Obviously, this figure is 7 inches tall, which of course meant for me, I had to go ahead and find a 7-inch scale figure, which had some nice soft goods. So I managed to source a figure for about 20 bucks. It was loose. It's this bendable Voldemort figure that we got over here, and I pretty much just chopped up all the robes and then got rid of the cape on the back, and that wound up being the perfect fit for this Snoke base body, and in turn, a really good look for this Darth Plagueis. As for the saber, as I mentioned, it comes from a different seller than the one who produced the Plagueis head, but this is also very awesome. It is inspired by the very small 3.75-inch scale Black Series figure, but yes, it is a saber cane, which is a very unique weapon we've only seen with Plagueis and Master Cenobite from the Clone Wars show, as far as I know, but it's really beautifully sculpted, and when you get really close, I didn't even expect this, but I guess you have some either ancient Sith language or Orabesh around this middle part of the whole shaft here, so I really like that. Then you can also go ahead and disconnect the main saber from here, so that's where you get a whole bunch of options. Like if I wanted to, I could have him holding this saber in this hand, and you can have him holding the rest of the cane in this hand, because of course I modified the hand so that way you'd be able to grip things. So now I've got him with both, looking pretty badass. I really like this look. They could throw on the mask, and he looks absolutely phenomenal. This saber actually did come with a 3D printed blade. I didn't prefer it as much, so I actually got the blade from the Count Dooku, who actually came with 2 different saber options. So I have the standard one over here, then I have the more kinetic, swishy one on the Palpatine that we will look at. I did actually make 2 additional accessories for this guy, which at the end of the day I don't really prefer, but if this is something that you're planning on doing, then here are your options. So over here, with the remnants of the Voldemort cape, I actually made this cloak over here. As you can see underneath it, it has sort of this plastic shell. This came from the General Grievous model kit, so actually what I did is I glued the cape right on top, and then pretty much that kind of goes over the shoulder pauldrons. Oop, there goes the mask, I'll pick that up later. And then you kind of have almost like, I guess, this kind of wandering look for him. He's kind of just traveling either through sandstorms or something like that. They're a little bit too beefy. I don't love it, but it's kind of a fun option, especially if you go ahead and have this other accessory, which I have over here. This comes from the McFarlane Soul Crusher Spawn figure, and I actually had to cut that right there. I spray painted that with the exact same color as everything else, and then you can kind of branch it around the jaw right there, and it looks pretty cool. It compensates a 6-inch scale head, which is actually 7 inches tall, so it doesn't look too bad. But then again, I kind of prefer him without the big overcoat and the hood. I kind of appreciate him with all the really nice paint work that I did on the head, kind of just exposed to shine in the sun, right? I will say as a footnote, he does look pretty cool with all the garments and the mask combined. I mean, at that point, he kind of looks a little bit too Darth Amalgus, who we are expecting in the Black Series, which I'm really excited for. But that is an option there. So I like how modular he is, even though I created a whole bunch of pieces that I don't want necessarily. But, I mean, that's a fun thing about customizing. You're going to find yourself having other accessories I might not want for this figure, but they could be used for someone else in the future. So it's all good. It's fun to experiment with the pieces you just don't really need. Now let's move on to my very, very low-effort Sheev Palpatine, who I put together in like 2 days, I think. This head I actually sourced off of eBay, and this is from the Marvel Legends Banshee. I don't know why it was separated from the 3-pack, but eBay's eBay, right? Whatever. So I have this really cool Screaming Head, which is kind of one of Banshee's abilities. I know nothing about him beyond that, except that he's part of the X-Men. But then I also have this younger look over here, which looks extremely similar to the fan art of young Palpatine that's been circling around the internet as kind of in the YouTube zeitgeist when people talk about Palpatine's life story. So it is really nice to interchange these heads. Although I will mention I did do kind of a cheat. This ball joint is not compatible with these heads, so I actually use a little bit of poster tack to kind of have it kind of stick on there and imply that it is locked into place when it's not. But again, it's a low effort figure. It's made of a whole bunch of parts I just didn't really want anything else to do with. So he's more just a supplement to the Plagueis I've made. And as for this body, it's one of my least favorite Black Series bodies of all time. It first came around with the very first release of Darth Maul, but this specific one was actually recycled for the Darth Nihilus, who you can probably suspect I found a better base body for. And then I guess we'll just run through all the accessories that we have here. We got a Kylo Ren cape over here, just kind of for fun, which is also removable. So again, another modular choice there. As for the hands, they were chopped up because I wanted those gloves for Nihilus, but I managed to use the Kylo Ren hands so that way he can grip this other saber over here. Not painted great, but this is from the same seller who provided the Darth Plagueis saber cane, if you'd like. And again, this is a blade from the Count Dooku Black Series figure, and I forgot to mention that these custom saber hilts are compatible with the Black Series official saber blades, so you can pop those out and back in whenever you fancy, just fine. As for the soft goods, I just kind of cut that up all on my own from scratch, just from old clothing, can't remember what. And for the belt, that is actually the Supreme Leader Snoke belt, just kind of painted with black and trimmed down, like his little hand in the back there, didn't even notice that. And you can see here, again, when I said low effort, that means he wasn't meant to last, really. Like, there's a little bit of paint rub right there. You got some of the exposed gold. I'll fix that later. Or maybe not. Maybe I just don't care. But, yeah, going down to the feet, no other changes, really. It's just the same stock legs. But its base body I hate, except for this guy, because Palpatine is meant to be shorter, and he is meant to be kind of a raggedy-looking apprentice at this point in the game. So, for any other figure, I'd hate it. But for a young Palpatine, who is supposed to be a shorter character, I think he works just fine. Alright, we're probably going to need a pan as we do size comparisons because one of these figures is extremely tall. But anyways, to start, we have the base Supreme Leader Snoke. Again, no mods to him whatsoever. This one's just for the shelf. He's not going to become anyone else. Because I do like the Praetorian Guard scene in Last Jedi, and that's about it. But then over here, I actually made a custom flute lady from the Skarsgård It movies. This is from the Pennywise Dancing Clown from that guy, I believe. They made so many of him. Editor, how many Pennywises did they make in NECA?
9. They produced
Wait,
9.
really? Wait, which ones?
It looks like they made 2 Curries, 2 Curries, and 7
Wait, so they made... Holy shit. Wait, so...
I said 2 Curries and 7
Okay, alright, I messed up my
Skarsgårds.
setup. That's another thing that can help inspire you to make a custom. Perhaps you have a figure which comes with an extra head sculpt for a whole different character or something like that. Then that alone is a pretty good starting point for making something brand new. In this case, Snoke, soft goods, a little bit of custom paint, some fodder Bandai parts to make a flute. Boom, there you go. New character for the horror shelf. Then moving on over here, we have Sheev Palpatine once again, along with Plagueis, next to, of course, the character that makes both of them important, being Darth Vader. This is the Obi-Wan Kenobi show variant, which is also pretty similar to the New Hope one that we've been seeing. I mean, we've seen this body several times before. And for kicks and giggles, we got the bendy figure of Voldemort. No idea what to do with him. But every size comparison must end with the Star Wars The Black Series Muck Muck.
You have a high midichlorian count, young one.
Nah, I'm just high on death sticks today. Just don't look at me. I'll be alright in the morning.
And that's pretty much it for this little showcase of these 2 customs I've produced. Again, there's a lot of steps that went into each one that I didn't even get around to in this video. For that, I apologize. I mean, pretty much when I'm going into a custom, there's a plan, and then there's things I do along the way that I wasn't considering beforehand. So if there's anything else that you noticed here that you have questions about or whatever, again, go ahead in the comments and let me know if you want to make your very own Snoke. And let me know how it turns out if you choose to make one. As for the young Palpatine, again, he was really just to get rid of some fodder parts that I have, but not without purpose. I also really love the size difference that we have between these. I mean, bear in mind, Plagueis does have the figure stand under him that makes him a little bit taller, but at the same time, Palpatine, because he uses that really pathetic, measly Maul/Nihilus base body, he is on the shorter side. But he should be. I mean, he's Ian McDiarmid, right? But younger. I guess you can call this Star Wars The Black Series Concept 2-pack. Like, this is something that they could release in the future if they wanted to. I mean, think about it. They're doing figures for the comics, for video games, gaming grades, stuff like that. It would be cool if they went ahead and did figures for the novels, even if they're legend and not within Disney canon. The customizer community is so much fun. If you're new to it and you're planning on making your very first custom, I highly recommend you bite the bullet and give it a shot. Like, even if you don't have the money to purchase the most high-end materials or anything like that, like, all this is pretty damn cheap. I highly recommend, like, just going through all the figures you have, any pieces that you got just lying around, just putting them in a box. Literally, just do that and let it sit. And let those ideas sink in for a while, even months. And then one day, you never know, you'll be like, hey, got this old Stormtrooper body. What if I dropped the head from this Marvel Legends onto him? It'll be like an unmasked Stormtrooper. You know, like, it could be that simple. The journey always starts with one. I think for me, the very first custom I ever made was a Boba Fett model kit, which I repainted to look like as he did in the infamous Star Wars Holiday Special. And even then, I just painted everything by hand with acrylics, dirt cheap. I got it from my college store pretty much. But I mean, that pretty much set me on the path. No extra parts or anything, just a repaint. That's all. So thank you guys so much for watching this customizer showcase. Again, I don't expect you to make things that are exactly like these, but I expect that if you want to try dipping your feet into the world of customizing, definitely do it, and hopefully you'll get something like this, or if not, better. I think you can do much better than me. I just threw these guys together and improvised along the way. I had a lot of fun. I think you will too. If you enjoyed this little showcase, then please, as per usual, be sure to like, comment,
And subscribe.
or like a whole bunch of monsters are gonna invade your home, Scoop! Zoinks! Blah! Rock on, and I will see you all later. He's definitely one of the most interesting Star Wars characters who we never actually see or hear from. I really hope that Disney Plus gets a little smart and makes a show about one of the most badass Sith Lords that we don't see. who is also very seminal to the entire Skywalker arc, and teaches us a lot about the Force and its nature on the way. It's the dumbest thing. The Plagueis novel is part of Legends, and for that reason alone, Plagueis is not canonically a moon. He could be a human within Disney canon, and that's just not as interesting. And his master, Darth Tenebris, was a Bith, who is of the Star Wars Cantina band species. So, I don't know, like, there's so many fun little things that come from these story arcs that I feel like they could just translate right into a show or right into a movie. But instead of like, let's just cobble together a plot and see how people like it. But you have all these great stories readily available to be smacked right into celluloid. Why not do that? This thing is technically Darth Vader's dad. Let that sink in for a minute.